Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of graphic description of gun violence, parental death and childhood trauma, PTSD and anxiety, suicidal ideation, emotional abuse and narcissistic family dynamics, substance use and recovery, secondary trauma. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I am very excited for this conversation today. I think it's going to be very interesting, and I've been told a wild ride. Welcome to the show, Susan Snow. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you. She is also in Denver with me. I just learned that. I'm really excited to have another Colorado person on here. I feel like I get a ton of people on the East Coast. I don't know what it is about the East Coast and podcasts, but they all want to be on my podcast.
Yes, I get it.
Anyways, Susan Snow is the daughter of slain LAPD detective Thomas C. Williams, who was ambushed and killed on October 31st, 1985, when she was 17 years old. She is a published author, speaker, and coach, and she currently works as a realtor in the Denver metro area. So welcome, Susan. How are you today?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day here in
It
Colorado.
is. It's
Gorgeous.
so pretty today. And then I think it's supposed to get cold again tomorrow. So yay.
Bummer.
It is winter at the time we are recording this still.
Yes.
All right, Susan, I'm going to let you start where you want to start with your story. It sounds super wild and crazy. And I'm sorry that you've had to go through some hard things. I will start with that. But go ahead and start wherever you would like.
Okay. Like you said in my intro, my dad was an LAPD detective. I was 17 in 1985, and I had a 6-year-old brother at the time,
Okay.
my only sibling. The one thing that I always say is that with law enforcement, there's always that fear of them getting hurt. When I was younger, he was a police officer on the streets, and I knew daddy could get hurt, but I didn't think anything worse than that. As I got older and he became a detective, I thought I had the false sense of security in that because
Yeah.
I figured he comes in after the fact. He's got a desk job, basically. So it kept him out of the fire, so to speak. But my dad was, I'll tell you a little bit about my dad so you can gauge like what he was as a dad, as a human.
Yeah.
He was he was my protector. He was a very present father. He was a very present person. So when if you were having a conversation with him, he made you feel like you were the most important person. And I've heard this from people that work with him. I heard people that have trained with him, me and my brother, and that's just who he was. And so being a detective, he had the day of Halloween, he was the lead detective on a case. And that day he was testifying. And I was 17 at the time, it was normal. Like I was a normal teenager and I wanted to go to a party.
I have a question for you. Had he had any issues prior to that had he ever come home hurt? Had he ever come home like with crazy story. I'm sure he had crazy
Oh
stories,
God, yeah.
but like, but I mean, you're saying you had that false sense of security. So I was just curious if he had come home ever where it was like, oh my gosh, like this is a wake up call ever? Never. Okay.
Never.
Okay.
The only thing I can say is that morning he was getting ready. My mom had already left for work because she had a party at work and stuff. And so she had already left in the morning, and it was just he and I, and he was getting ready for court. And he never, his personality type was like, he was very laid back. And so that day he was acting anxious. So whether he knew there was some imminent or that there was some danger in the situation or not, I don't know. But I know that he was extra nervous that morning about
Okay.
how he looked.
Oh,
So I helped him put his suit together. My dad was not a fashionista by any means.
most dads
And
aren't, I feel
yeah, and
like.
so picking his tie out and helping him with that. Meanwhile, I was asking dad to go to a party. Since it was a school night, he was like, absolutely not. You're not going to go to a party with your boyfriend and your friends and on a school night. And continued to help him get ready for court. And then he dropped me off at school. And the whole time at school, I was like having all these plans in my head. I was gonna come home, I was gonna clean the house, I'm gonna just schmooze my parents to let me go to this party. So the plan was that dad was gonna get off court, go pick up my brother from school, and then my mom would come home and we would go trick-or-treating with my brother who was 6 and whatever. That didn't happen. So when I got home and my mom came home and she was telling me the day and then went and got her costume off. She was getting her costume off. And then I was putting mine on. I was Madonna that year. So that just ages me right there. Anyways, I would like remember I was bound and determined to go to this party. So I was really excited. And the phone rang. And of course, being a teenager, I thought it has to be for me. Who's going to call my parents?
Yes.
So I ran across and picked up the phone because back then they were attached to the wall.
Yep.
And it wasn't for me. It was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved.
Oh my gosh.
And at that point, I just froze. And I saw my mom come around the corner and I just handed her the phone as fast as I could
Yeah.
and stood there and I watched her. I watched her demeanor, I watched her body language, and I tried to listen in to hear anything I could, and I could tell by just how she looked that it
Mhm.
was bad. So she got off the phone, she looked at me and said, "We're going to the school." And we jumped in the car and said nothing to each other all the way there. And the deep pit of my stomach was like, what is this going to look like? Like
Mhm.
I'm going from all these like scenarios in my head to just being scared. I was a kid and I didn't know what this was going to look like. So
Yeah.
the way that the school is put, you've got the front of the school, you've got a parking lot in the middle of the school, and then the kids after school care was let out on the back side of the school. And so we parked in the parking lot in the middle of the school. And at that point, when we started walking towards the back of the school, we could see the night sky lit up because there were so many police cars and there was an ambulance sitting in the street. And as we walked, there were two officers that were coming towards us and they had tears in their eyes. And we just kept moving forward. My mom and I caught a glimpse of my dad's truck, so we started to run towards it. As we
Mhm.
got closer to the truck, we saw glass on the ground, rounded the truck, and there he was, partially covered up. They covered him up where he fell. My brother, he survived. My dad had saved his life by telling him to duck down in the truck.
Oh, wow.
But at the time, I didn't know where he was. And at the time, I watched my mom drop to her knees and scream. And I stood there, and all I could do was hyper focus on that ambulance and thinking to myself, why isn't anyone helping him?
Yeah.
It wasn't, I was not comprehending what I was seeing. And it was so surreal. And so soon after, two officers grabbed us and escorted us into the school. And we went into an office, and I sat down immediately. And my mom got taken away by some detectives, obviously, to talk to her. And as I was sitting there, I was just trying to comprehend what was happening. And again, I just kept thinking of that ambulance. And it wasn't until I heard two ladies who worked at this school talking. And the one lady said to the other that my dad was deceased.
Mm,
And that's when my world cracked.
mm,
And I literally just wanted to get out of that chair and run as far
mm,
away from the scene as I could get. But my legs felt like cement. Like my
mm,
body, my state of mind and my body, I could not move. And I was in such a state of shock and such a state of, oh my God, what am I going to do? And wanting to, my mom wasn't there. I didn't know where my brother was. I didn't know if he was hurt. No one was telling me anything. And my mom came back and she said, I'm sending you with a neighbor.
okay.
So part of me wanted my family unit, needed my family unit. I was still a kid
Yeah.
and I was still trying to process all of this and needed an adult to say, we're going to get through this, to give me that kind of support. And I didn't get it. I
Mm.
got sent to the neighbor.
And at this
And
time, your mom still hadn't said anything to you about what was going on.
no, all I knew is I was going to a neighbor's house.
Okay.
And I went to the neighbor's house, and my poor neighbor had known my parents forever. And they knew something really bad happened because when we were at the school, my house was swarmed. So there was police cars everywhere, helicopters over. Unbeknownst to us, we were a target.
Oh,
It was bigger than what we even were comprehend. Like it was way bigger than we even knew.
now that you say that, it makes perfect sense. But my brain wasn't even going there as you're telling me the story. Like, of course, if they targeted your dad, they could easily target the family too.
Yes. Yeah.
Ugh,
So I went to the neighbors. She tried, God love her, she tried so hard to really comfort me and give me support, but she was reeling herself.
sure.
And all I kept saying is, I want my boyfriend. I need my boyfriend. And so she called him at work and she didn't tell him what happened. She just said that he needed to come here. I needed him at that point. So when he showed up, he was like, she told him that there was an issue with my dad, but she didn't say that he was gone. So when he showed up, he was like, "Get your purse, get your things. Let's go to the hospital. What hospital is he at? Where's your mom? Where's your brother?" He was going on no information.
Yeah.
And I couldn't spit it out. I just stood at the porch and I just could not say the words because if I did, it was real.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of he was getting antsy in the pants, he was just like, "Let's go." It came out.
Mm,
And I just said, he's gone.
mm,
He's not at a hospital. And my boyfriend was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "He's not, he's gone." And I watched my 19-year-old boyfriend, who I had only been dating 3 months, drop to his knees. And we were both sobbing. It was horrible. And for us, we were kids and we didn't know how to process all of this.
of course. Yeah.
I know probably most boys his age, this is big. This is huge. Like most guys would have said, I'm out. This is
Yeah.
no. He stuck it out and he was there with me. And I think part of it, and we've talked about this because I married that man.
Oh.
We've been together for 39 years.
Oh, I love that.
He I think he knew my mom and I did not have a healthy relationship prior to my dad's death. And I think he knew that I was going to need some extra support, some friendship, someone to be there for me. And I'm very grateful for that because it took them 6 days to find the perpetrators.
Oh, wow.
And so I had all of that police presence for 6 days, 20 plus officers all over my front yard, backyard, helicopters. I had bodyguards where I needed to go. It was crazy. We had media camped out because it was the first time an officer was actually assassinated.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a big story all over. It was international news. It was just nuts. And again, I was 17 and there was no, in the 80s, back then, there were no talk about mental health.
Mm.
There were no resources for kids who have
Mhm.
gone through trauma. And so I had to rely on the adults that were around me. And I will tell you, it took the media 2 days to figure out he had a teenage daughter
Oh,
because
wow.
all of the focus was on my brother, and so be it. He watched his father get murdered and my mother, and I got pushed to the side. When I started having all of the symptoms of PTSD, I didn't know what it was.
Of course.
I had never
Shortly
heard of
after.
PTSD. I had no idea what anxiety was. I just knew that I wanted to crawl through my skin.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what depression was. I just knew I couldn't get out of bed every day.
Mm.
And I lived in a fog. And every day, I wanted to be with my dad. I didn't know how that would work. I didn't know about suicidal ideation. I just had that feeling.
Wow.
I just had that feeling. I wanted to be with my dad. And the anxiety of my security system is gone, my protector is gone.
Yeah.
Everything that I knew was gone. And now I was struggling with how am I going to have a relationship with my mother without him there because he was the voice of reason. So there was a lot of different things going on. About a month after the funeral and everything, LAPD came to my mom, the advocates, the victim advocates came to my mom and said, LAPD wants to send you to therapy, all three of you. And so my mom said, you're going to therapy. And I didn't know what therapy was. In fact, back then I just thought if you went to a therapist, you were crazy. Like
Oh,
you were
right.
nuts, right? You were
Yeah.
on your way to the funny farm. But I was also in the state of mind of if you pushed me in a direction, that's the direction I would go
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to advocate for myself.
Yeah.
So I just did what I was supposed to do. And so I said, okay, I'll go to therapy. I don't know what that means.
Did
And
anybody at any point sit you down and tell you exactly what happened?
bits and pieces.
Yeah. And then I'm assuming at some point, did you and your brother ever talk about it back then?
I didn't get to see my little brother until about, I would say, late morning, early afternoon the next day. I had
Okay.
heard him crying that night in his room. I had nothing. Like I wanted to get up and hug him and hold him and
Sure.
tell him I loved him, but I had nothing left.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't get out of bed. I had all these strangers in my house for
Yeah.
days. And so processing all of this, I had to do it hiding in my room, literally. I didn't want to talk to anyone,
Yeah.
but nobody came to talk to me either.
I know. I think
Um,
it's so interesting that it was like even you're riding in the car with your mom to the scene, then they put you in a room by yourself, then you're sent to the neighbors, and all you gathered was that your dad was dead, and then but nobody's telling you what's going on, what's happening, what has happened. And maybe they were trying to protect you at that point, but you were 17 years old too. So you were
Yeah,
an
they
adult.
didn't do me any favors for sure. But at the same time, I think a lot of that was my mom's control.
Mm,
She didn't always make the right decisions, but here's the one thing I could say. That night was so chaotic.
yeah,
Okay. She was dealing with her own stuff. It was chaotic. She had my brother to worry about. There was a lot going on. So I don't blame her. And I don't blame her for coping with her grief and her trauma in
sure.
the way that she did.
Yeah,
My mom, it's taken me many years to figure out that my mom has a narcissistic personality. And so she was reacting in the way that she only knows how to.
sure. Yeah.
It had consequences, though.
Yeah.
And so when I went to this therapist, I have to tell you, I know now, being a coach myself and going through all of the things that I've gone through with my own healing, he was not trauma informed, nor was he trauma competent.
Mm,
And I think he was really intimidated by the situation to the point where he kept our sessions very shallow.
mm,
And he never asked me how that night affected me. And I tell people that, and they go, "What?" Yes, because if he had asked me that question, it would have opened up this whole can of worms. And he
mm.
was not ready for that. So
I mean, like you said, that was in the 80s. Like it was definitely mental health was very different. And I bet you there were nowhere near the amount of trauma specialists,
no,
counselors that we
there,
have now. And you didn't get to choose that person. The
no,
police department just said, we're sending you to therapy. Here's the person, make the
yes,
phone call.
yes. It was always about my relationship with my mom, my brother, my
Mm,
boyfriend in school. And every week that I saw this man for an entire year, I would say, "Oh my gosh, today's the day he's going to help me feel better. Today's the day." I was not at an age where I could verbalize everything that was going on. Plus, I was terrified to say anything because I thought they thought I was crazy and they'd lock me
oh,
up. You know what I mean? It's just like
oh,
it was all based out of fear and not being able to verbalize what all I was dealing with.
yeah.
So after a year, he looked at me and he said, "Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady. You're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore."
Oh,
And I came out of there thinking, "Oh my God, I'm done. I'm cooked. I'm crazy. I've broken.
oh,
Like, not even a professional can help me. I'm going
oh.
to have to deal with all of these things,
Mm,
the anxiety, the depression, the suicidal ideation, all these things by myself. I'm gonna have to figure it out.
mm.
I'm just gonna have to live with this. This is what I'm gonna be living with for the rest of my life. That was my mindset. So what I ended up doing is I took on my emotional mask. And I talk about this a lot because a lot of people do this. The adults would come to me and say, "Oh my gosh, you are so strong. You're so strong. You're so brave. You're so this, you're so that." So that was my mask. My life could be turning upside down and I would put that mask on and put nothing outward. Nobody knew anything about what was going on with me.
I just had a conversation with a friend the other day about people saying, you're so strong, you're so strong, you're so strong. And I've seen these memes and stuff on Instagram, but it's you didn't have any other choice. Okay, great. Like I understand people mean when they say that, but you literally had no other choice. You had to still get through every day. You had to it's just such an interesting thing to say to somebody when they're in the depths of despair and
Right.
they're like, oh my God, you're so strong. I don't know. I think it's
Well, and I
really
think people look at children as they bounce back, they're resilient.
right.
But what they need to understand is that all of the experiences we go through as children define as we get older, those things come up and smack us in the face because that is a part of your programming.
Yeah.
And so it creates a mentality. And so that created a mentality of, I'm not going to let anyone help me. You could stand in front of me and be like, how can I, this was before, how can I support you? Oh no, because in my mind, this is my burden. This isn't yours, it's mine. I'm not putting my burden on you. You've got enough going on in your plate and whatever. I did it to my own husband, who was there through the beginning. We both went through trauma together. He may not have been there that night where I was and saw what I did, but he was there through everything moving forward. And it was traumatic for a young man. It's a process. And when this therapist told me that, I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine for the rest of my life. Guess what? I wasn't. And I lived in fight or flight for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
14 years until we moved to Colorado in 97. And now I'm married. I have 2 children, small children. I was doing hair at the time in Greenwood Village, which we're at a salon. And April 20th of 1999, I was working that day. And I was doing a client. I went back to take a break and turned on the little TV, and up popped all of the Columbine high school shootings.
Oh, wow.
I had a visceral reaction. I started to have flashbacks. I saw the police officers, the ambulances, the lights, the kids that were around my same age. It was at a school. I couldn't put two and two together as to why I was having this reaction, but I had turned pale and I started to panic. I had panic attacks because I was seeing this stuff in my head. And my coworker didn't know my story, so she had no idea what was going on. And she was like, "What is happening to you?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know." And she said, "You're not old enough to have kids that go there. And you said you didn't live in this area. What is happening?" I said, "I honestly can't answer you. I don't know." And I didn't want to tell her what I was seeing in my head.
Yeah.
So
Did
I
she
did what
know
I
the
was good at.
story? Had told her that story previously? No. Yeah.
Nobody knew.
Mm.
I put my mask on
Mm.
and I went out. I finished my day.
I think that
Everybody
is
around me
one.
was a hot mess. Everybody around me
Yeah.
was upset, was angry, was crying, was whatever. And I was like this.
I think that's one of the hardest things about doing hair because I've experienced that when I've had really hard days. You have to go in and you have to still give those clients that your full attention and experience, and you have to put a smile on your face. And not all clients, some you get really close with and you
Yeah.
can cry to and whatever.
Yeah.
But if that's something you weren't talking about prior to that either, and nobody knew about it, then so you did what you've been doing for 14 years and went out and put on a
Yeah.
relatively happy face because it was Columbine and that was terrible.
Yeah.
But you suppressed all of your own.
I did. But the
Mhm.
minute I walked through the door, all of those old emotions
Ooh.
came flooding back. And I was suicidal. But
Oh.
I had a fight in my head because now I'm a mom. And even though I wanted this pain to just go away, and I was in such a dark place and I was spiraling, I still was like, I can't leave my kids. And it was a really bad place to be. My husband, being the smart man that he is, met me at a door a couple days later and he said, "You have two choices. You either go get help
Mm.
today, or I'm taking you and putting you in a hospital."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Okay." I put up the white flag
Mm.
and I went to a physician, and that physician put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a card and he said, I want you to make an appointment with this therapist. And I literally laughed in his face. And I said, I tried this 14 years ago and it didn't do anything for me. What
Yeah.
makes you think that this person is going to help me? And he said, you have no choice.
Mm.
So I said, all right, I'll go. And I made an appointment and sat down with this woman, therapist. And within the first 3 minutes, I knew it was different. She specialized in PTSD, severe trauma. I She asked me right away, what is it that I was going through? What triggered it? So I told her, I told her everything that I went through at 17 and what I was currently dealing with. And she looked me in the face and she said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal
Mm.
because you have PTSD. And what you need to understand about PTSD is that it's not something that goes away, it's something you learn to manage.
Oh.
And in that, I describe it as the sky opened up and rainbows shot out because I finally had answers
Mm.
to what was going on with me. And I finally knew that I had someone, because even telling her my story was being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there was no judgment. So I felt safe. And I knew that having her background and the way that we were talking to each other, I knew that this woman was going to be able to guide me in my healing. And I had hope. And that was the most important thing for me, to know that I wasn't, one, I wasn't alone.
Yes.
And two, I wasn't crazy.
Mm.
I wasn't broken. And how many times do you hear that? Oh, that person's broken. They're temporary broken, but it doesn't mean they can't be healed.
Yeah.
So she knew she had 14 years of living in fight or flight.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with myself. And that was the first thing I said to her is, I'm not sleeping. I had sleep deprivation, and sleep deprivation exacerbates depression
Mm.
a lot. And so she said, we really need to dive in and tackle that first.
Okay.
And I said, okay. She said, what we're going to do is we're going to tackle each thing that happens to you. I'm going to teach you a modality. I'm going to, with the non-sleeping. She asked me what happens. I said, I lay down, I close my eyes, and I see that night. And I feel all the feelings. And then I go to a dark place and I can't get out of that dark place. So then it terrifies me to shut my eyes and therefore I don't sleep.
Oh, wow.
And she said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to start journaling.
Mm.
And I was like, journaling? And she goes, yeah, there's different ways you can journal. You can write it, you can draw it or paint it, you can use music, whatever it is that you love to do, you can utilize that in your journaling. Now it's podcasts.
Ah.
So I thought she was crazy, but I went with it. And I said, I write. I like to write. I used to write poetry when I was young and that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write. So she said, okay, great. I'm going to grab a pad of paper and keep it by your bed. And I want you to do this every night before you go to sleep and
Mm.
tell me what happens. And she gave me a prompt. And so the first night, I wrote everything that was swirling around in this head of mine, just everything, all on paper. And it was easier for me to fall asleep. And then by the second night and the third night, I was sleeping like a baby. And
Oh.
I didn't want to admit it to her, but the next week when I went to go see her, she was like, okay, what happened? And I was like, oh, it worked.
Ah,
I was so skeptical because that is just, to me, it was like, whoa. But I saw the power in it and anyone can do it, which I think is just amazing. It's a modality that anyone can use at any time in their lives. And as we started to move towards the anxiety part, that's when she was introducing me to EFT, which is the tapping and breathing techniques. And I did breath work and I did box breathing and I did things like that to calm my nervous system and bring my state back into calmness. And like I said, we attacked each thing with a modality. And she didn't want to throw me into the big things like EMT, EMDR, and those kind of things. And it's even evolved even more than that, right? So now they're using psychedelics and all kinds of
mhm.
stuff. She knew like baby steps. So that's what I teach people is you need to find the modality that works for you. And I think it's really important to getting back to the differences between the first therapist and the second therapist. And this is a lesson that I learned, and this is what I teach, is that this is your healing.
Mm,
And it is important for you to be able to be vulnerable with your therapist enough to do the work that you need to do. Because if you don't and you hold back, the real healing isn't going to happen.
yeah.
And if you don't heal, it can lead to other things. So I've talked to people about sobriety and finding sobriety and the fact that if you don't deal with the reasons behind the drinking and the drugging and the whatever you're doing, the self-sabotaging type behaviors, it's going to be a lot harder to get to the sobriety.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is since the book came out, since I started speaking to people and coaching people, what I realized was that there's so many people that have gone through trauma that don't realize they've gone through
Mm,
trauma because maybe it was a childhood trauma that was so normal. It was like a normal environment around them that they think everybody's family was like that.
mm,
And so they don't see that as trauma,
interesting. Yeah.
but it is. And that leads to other behaviors. It leads to a lot of fight or flight. It leads to a lot of dealing with situations as a trauma response within relationships. So that's why I got into coaching because I really realized that there's people out there that, and they even look at my trauma and go, I didn't go through anything as bad
Yeah.
as yours. But everybody's trauma is their trauma.
Yeah. Doesn't make it any less harder to deal with.
It
Yeah.
isn't. And so what's important is the healing.
Yeah.
What's important is finding the resiliency and and what I felt through my healing was through forgiveness. I was taking my power back. And
Forgiveness is
a
huge.
lot of people think that there's such a myth around it that you're letting them off the hook. No, I'm not. What I'm saying is I'm taking my power back and I'm telling you, you can't hurt me anymore.
Mm,
This situation, this thing that happened to me can't hurt me anymore because I am not going to allow it.
yeah.
I'm going to heal from this and it has nothing to do with you. This is all me. And so all of the work that I had to do, the most work that I did was writing that book. And
Mm.
it took me 4.5 years
Oh, wow.
because and I started it at 50 years old. I drew a line in the sand and I said, today's the day. One, there had been a lot of people throughout the years that have told my story in their head
Mm.
or had opinions of who I should be
Ah.
based on what happened. And I got to the point where I was like, no, this is time. I need to tell people my story. And when I decided that, I knew I was going to have to be really vulnerable in it. And I was going to have to be authentic as I could.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of fear in that because for a lot of different reasons. One, my relationship with my mother was still hanging by a thread.
Okay.
And I knew that in telling my truth, it may destroy what was left,
Oh.
or it could open a conversation.
Mm.
There's things I talk about in my book about my husband and I's situation and what we've gone through as a couple. And there was fear in that destroying that.
Yeah.
And there was safety fears of me being out there again
Yeah.
because there were multiple, this was a planned out assassination of my dad. There were multiple people
Mm.
involved. Three of them were convicted, six of them were tried. They had nine in the beginning, six were tried, three were convicted. And two of those that were convicted were still in prison.
Mm.
One of them was released in 2017,
Mm.
which is when I thought, okay, my book is coming. I have more healing to do through that. And then, yeah, then at 50, I said, that's it. I'm doing this. But anytime my fear came up, what I ended up doing is I found the purpose. I found my purpose as to, I asked myself, what is the purpose of writing this book? Who is this for besides yourself? And I realized there's so many people out there that needed to hear my message,
Mm.
that needed to see that they can get to the resiliency side of whatever it is they went through.
Mhm.
And there were faceless people out there, and I needed to continue. And I could, my intention was to heal not only my loved ones, but law enforcement that still holds so much pain and anger around my dad's death. So I thought about all those people and I just bulldozed through that fear every single time. And that's my tagline, bulldoze your fear,
Mhm.
because you can do it, but you got to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And once you do, that allows you, that gives you the strength to keep moving forward. And, but having to relive and sit in all of those emotions and all of those states of mind at the time and was not easy. It was not an easy road. And that's why it took me 4.5 years. But it's done really well and it's helped people in ways that I couldn't even wrap my head around.
Mm.
And it was important. I feel like when we heal from traumas, it's not an obligation, but I feel like it's our purpose. We're given certain things in our lives to learn from. And a lot of good came out of a horrible situation.
Yeah.
But it's up to us that have gone through it, walked through it, trudged through it to help others, to lift them up, to make them feel like there's hope and
Yeah.
that they're not alone.
Mm.
And there are people out there that are willing to come alongside you and help you and guide you.
Yeah.
And so that's my message. And that's the importance of my message is just I went through this horrific situation, but and there's so many people out there that go through all kinds of terrible things. But as human beings, we are resilient.
Mm.
We are. And we just have to find it.
Yeah.
But we can't do it by ourselves. We need others to lift us up, to guide us, to come alongside us and allow us to feel when I coach or even when I'm talking to people who are going through loss, grief, it's okay to sit in that. It's okay. It's also okay to have joy. It can be simultaneous,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's okay. It's not disrespectful to your loved one, to
Yeah.
your loss. And I tell people when they're grieving, that's their way of loving their loved ones.
Mm,
And they feel that.
yeah.
They're out there, they're
Yeah.
with you. I feel my dad all the time. In fact, when I was writing my book, I felt like he was kicking me in the butt the whole entire
Oh.
time. You keep going, girl. Keep going. Tell our story. Keep going. There was no fail. There was no, I can't do this. And believe me, when I first had my book go through with the editor, I had zero idea of how to write a book in the first place. Zero.
Yeah.
And I had been out of school for so long, like I forgot English. I forgot punctuation and
Yeah, sure.
all the things, proper spelling of certain things. And she was fantastic because she not only was an editor, but she was also coaching me through the entire thing. But when I first got my manuscript back, it hurt. It was like worse than that paper you got back in school with the big red pen
Oh,
on it.
so much stuff in it.
Like
Yeah.
pages and pages of that.
You're like, okay, I'm basically rewriting this whole thing.
Pretty much, yes. And so
Um,
but it was all a process that I knew at the end I was going to, it was going to be something that I'm proud of, not only for me to be able to successfully publish it, but to know that I walked that journey and this time I had the tools that I was given so that when those emotions came up and I had to sit in them for a while, I knew how to pull myself out of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
What is your relationship like with your brother now?
He and I are very close.
Oh, good.
We weren't for years.
Yeah. There's a pretty big age gap there too, so
There
that
was,
mm,
and he really struggled. And
sure.
as a young man, he got into some trouble. There was some addiction issues. My mom as well. She was a drinker, and that only exacerbated the abuse,
Mm,
unfortunately. So my brother and I both dealt with that.
yeah,
And when I was 18, I moved out. I
yeah,
had to. And I
yeah,
left him at 8 years old. So we both have had different journeys, but the same. And about 7 years ago, we started healing our relationship, like really diving in and having conversations that brought us closer for sure. He has not read my book, and that is okay. He has his PTSD is he has stackable trauma his entire life. I understand that.
yeah,
And when he's able to,
yeah,
when he's strong enough, he will.
yeah.
But he's still proud of me. And I call him my Hercules
Oh.
because he's 6'2" and almost 300 pounds. He's a big boy.
Mm.
He's my big little brother, but a teddy bear, like heart of gold, amazing human being. Married the love of his life a couple years ago, and he's a stepdad, he's a pop, and he's my Hercules. I love him to death. And as far as my mom and I, we no longer have a relationship. We went no contact when the book came out. Her
Oh,
decision.
oh,
It
so
was her
did she
decision.
she read the book then, or
Yes.
and you have expected it to go
I
that
didn't know what was going to happen and understand that literally when the book came out is when I was realizing, not diagnosing her, but just starting to understand who she was
way?
or who she is and why I felt the way I felt when I was around her. So I was okay with the decision. Like I had to be okay with the decision. If she called me tomorrow and said, I'd like to sit down and have a conversation with you, I would sit down and have a conversation with her,
Yeah.
but it's not going to happen.
Mm,
And that's unfortunate, but I'm at peace very much. I'm very much at peace about it. And I wish her and I send her love all the time,
yeah.
but her life is her life.
Mm,
And the choices she made were her choices. And
yeah.
I have no control over any of that. I only have control over myself. I will say that I am a much better mom
Mm,
because I learned very early on that I didn't want to do to my kids what was done
yeah.
to me. And I come from generational abuse all the way back. So on my mom's side. So I was a mom that was very cognizant of my behaviors. I'm very close with my kids, my
Mm.
adult children now. Woo.
Eh,
Won't talk about their ages.
that's fine.
Just know that they're adults. That's all you need to know. But yeah, I'm very close with my children and I'm very proud of that. But I got to tell you, it's a lot of work
Yeah.
when you are a person, especially when I was living in fight or flight.
Yeah.
It was a lot harder work
Yeah.
because I had to check myself. I had to check my behaviors and making sure that I wasn't putting onto them
Yeah.
what I was feeling and dealing with. It has helped me to know about mental health. It has helped me to know about modalities because my kids have dealt with mental issues as well.
Sure.
And I have been able to, and my husband have both been able to meet them where they were
Mm.
and understand them and encourage them and guide them.
Yeah.
And I still do. And I feel very grateful for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents out there that don't know what to do with their kids when they start to spiral or they're dealing with whatever they are. And our kids deal with so much more now than I did as a teenager, a young adult. I think it's really important for Gen Xers such as myself to really try to meet their kids where they're at
Yeah.
and just understand that this world is crazy to them. And now they've got this technology and this social media, and
Yeah.
there's just so much negativity in this world. And that's the part of me that every day when I hear these stories of people who are behaving in certain ways or whatever, I can step back and say, there's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind their behavior. There's a reason why. And as a realtor, as a hairdresser, you see that people reacting in certain ways or treating people in certain ways, and it comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, if you've got to have, and it's taken me many years, don't get me wrong.
Oh, sure.
Every day I'm learning something new, and especially like even from my kids, like I
Yeah.
learn stuff from my kids all the time, but I think it's just important and I think that is why my purpose is to go out and really help people heal
Yeah.
and be able to have the kind of lives that they dreamed of, to have their dream life, to be able to have the relationships that are solid around them and feel supported in that.
So what is the name of the book? I don't know if we've touched on that in here.
Yep, the name of the book is The Other Side of the Gun: My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. It's
Okay.
on Amazon right now. You can
Mhm.
get it in paperback form. You can also do a Kindle form.
Okay.
If you're on Kindle Unlimited, you can actually read the book for free. But if you do, please leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I'm open to whatever. Everybody has their own perceptions. Some people are not going to what I have to say, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, amazing. So now you are going to do some of your own coaching to help other people.
I am.
So what is that? Do you know what that's going to look like for you? Like how you want to work with people, and is it going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
one-on-one, groups? Tell me all about that.
Yeah, initially, I think it's going to be one-on-one. Here's the kind of coaching I'm going to do. I'm going to be doing trauma resiliency coaching. And what that looks like is I'd be working with people. I'm not a therapist by any means. I'm not a licensed therapist, and I wouldn't pretend to be. But when people go through therapy and they get to a certain place where they've healed, they still feel stuck. What do I do with what I know? What do I do moving forward? How is this going to affect my relationships, my businesses, my job title, whatever, right? And so that's where I step in and I help to move you forward. Find ways to utilize what you know in your own healing into whatever it is that whatever your purpose is, whatever your goals are,
Yeah.
right? If you want to start a business, if you're, because even though you've done the healing, there's still negative self-talk. There's still insecurities about things.
It's a
Like
never-ending journey,
it's a
really.
never-ending journey. And so for a coach is someone who literally helps you to find and put like a roadmap to where you are, meeting you where you are to where you want to go. So that's the type of coaching I'm going to be doing. And since I've been there, I've walked the walk and everything. I'm very confident when I give people a safe space to be vulnerable,
Mm.
bottom line. And that is what's the most important thing to me is that you trust me in helping you in guiding you in the right direction. And I've always, and you know this, like my husband's joke is we're armchair therapists as hairdressers.
Yes.
We've heard everything.
Yep.
And so coaching has always, in some form or fashion, been in my world.
Yeah.
This time, it is an absolute passion for me. I feel like all the steps that I've taken in my life from being an armchair therapist as a hairdresser to being in real estate and coaching agents to what I'm doing now, it's stepping stones of where I want to go. And my spirit animal is Mel Robinson. She didn't start out as a coach or a speaker or whatever.
Yeah.
And look where she is now. And that's my aspiration. That's my aspiration. I intend on getting on stages in
Mm.
front of thousands of people because if I can help one person in that audience, I've done my job. If I've saved one life in that audience, I've done my job. And that's what I was put on earth to do. And I feel very strongly that this is above me.
Yeah.
I'm a vessel. I'm just a vessel. And I've been given this to help others.
Yeah. So where can people find you to work with you?
You can find me at my website,
Okay.
actually.
We'll link all that in the show notes.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy. It's susansnowspeaks.com.
Love
So
that.
whether you're listening and you think that I might be a good fit for a speaking to your company or whatever, I do have keynote talks. I've spoken internationally. Yeah, if you want to do that, or if you're interested in the coaching, there's a way that you can contact me. If you even have questions, like I'm an ear, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm a big ear. And if you just have questions or you don't know where to start, or maybe you started, but you just don't feel like you're getting what you're supposed to get out of it,
Yeah.
contact me. And I have no problem having that conversation.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. What parting words do you have for my listeners after all of that? You had some real good nuggets in all of that. What kind of final parting words do you want to share with anyone listening that might be struggling as well?
Healing is scary, and that's normal. When you are feeling uncomfortable, just know that you're healing. Healing is stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling it's not easy, it's scary, and I'm not going to candy coat it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. However, having the freedom from the pain that's holding you back is priceless. And the number one person that you should make priority is yourself. Because when you heal yourself, it's a ripple effect and it affects the people around you.
Yeah. Ooh.
So those are my parting
That
words.
was so good. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so sorry that you had to go through everything you went through.
Thank you.
But I've found a common theme on this podcast is that most people would not go back and change it. Obviously, you would love to have your dad here with you.
Of course.
That all made you into who you are today, and you are a beautiful soul. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for coming on here and sharing that. And I love the journey you've been on. So keep doing
Thank
the
you.
work. And I love that you're going to help other people.
Yeah.
Yes, if anybody wants to get in touch with Susan, I will link everything in the show notes. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you all on the next episode.